27 shots, one of the best teams on earth. And a 40-year-old keeper from a country of 500,000 people kept every last one of them out of his net. When the final whistle blew, he dropped to his knees and cried. Not because he had just made history, because the one person he wanted in that stadium was 4,000 miles away, watching on a screen, locked out by a piece of paper she could not afford. This is the story of the save no camera caught. The world will remember the diving stops, the scrambles in front of goal. The Spanish players standing with their hands on their heads, staring at a ball that simply would not go in. But the real story of that afternoon is not only what happened on the grass, it is who was missing from the seats. A mother who had waited her whole life to watch her son walk out onto the biggest stage in football, and who could not get into the country to do it. Two stories, one afternoon. Let me start with the man in the goal. 10 years ago, almost nobody outside of Cape Verde knew the name Josimar Diaz. He was a goalkeeper drifting through the smaller leagues of Europe, Moldova, then Cyprus, then Slovakia. Not the bright stadiums you see on television, but cold and half-empty grounds in towns most fans could not find on a map. He did not even turn pro until he was 25 years old, which in football is very late. His first club was a side called Progresso, all the way over in Angola. From there, he kept moving, kept packing his bags, kept chasing a career that never quite became famous. He earned a strange nickname along the way, Vozinha. In Portuguese, it means little grandmother or granny. The story goes that the older boys he played with as a kid would knock him around on the pitch, then laugh and tease him for running home to complain to his grandparents. The name stuck. And there is something to it, because his grandparents raised him. They were his whole world growing up. Hold on to that. It matters later. He joined the Cape Verde national team back in 2012. For years, nothing huge happened. There were moments when he thought about walking away from the national side for good. He kept going, he said, only because of a dream. The dream that one day his tiny island nation might reach a World Cup, and that if it ever did, he might be the one standing in the goal. Now picture how impossible that dream looked. Cape Verde is a small group of islands off the coast of West Africa. About 500,000 people live there. The whole country could fit inside one mid-sized city. They had never been to a World Cup, not once. And in 2026, they finally got in for the first time in their history. They had earned it the hard way. In African qualifying, they won 7 games, drew 2, and lost only 1, finishing top of their group and skipping the nervy playoff path that swallows so many smaller nations. Their coach, a local man everyone simply calls Bubista, had built a team that defended like its life depended on it. Then the football gods handed them the worst possible welcome. They were drawn into a group with Spain. Let me be clear about who Spain are. At kickoff, they were ranked the second best team on the planet, behind only Argentina. They were the current champions of Europe. Their bench alone was worth more than most teams at the whole tournament. They had stars like Lamine Yamal, a teenager already feared across the world. The kind of squad where players who would start for almost any other country cannot even get on the field. Days earlier, another first-time nation, Curaçao, had been blown out 7-1 by Germany. Everyone expected Cape Verde to get the same treatment, or worse. The match was in Atlanta, on a Monday afternoon, inside a packed stadium under the closed roof. And from the first whistle, Spain came in waves. Pass after pass, wave after wave, the ball pinned deep in the Cape Verde half. By the end of the 90 minutes, they had taken 27 shots. 27. That is a number that usually ends in a blowout. But standing between the posts was the granny, and he would not let it happen. There was one moment late in the first half that told you everything. In the 39th minute, Spain worked the ball down the left and suddenly had a clear chance right in front of the net, with only Vozinha in the way. He flung himself at the striker. The shot smacked off the crossbar. The ball popped up into a mad scramble, and a Spanish player rose to head the rebound toward the empty goal. Vozinha somehow got up, leapt again, and shoved it away. The play was waved off in the end for an offside flag, but it did not matter. The message was sent. This man was not going down quietly. Spain kept coming. They sent on Lamine Yamal in the second half, a teenager still easing back from an injury, to try to break the lock. Nothing worked. Every cross, every shot, every loose ball seemed to find the keeper's gloves or his body or his feet. By the end of the day, he had made 7 saves, 6 of them from inside the box, the close-range ones that should be goals. He even finished with 68 touches of the ball, the most of anyone on his team, which for a goalkeeper is almost unheard of. He was not just defending. From the back, he was running the whole game. When the whistle finally went, the score was 0-0. A clean sheet against one of the greatest teams in the world in his very first game by a man playing in the Portuguese second division for a club called Chaves. He was named Player of the Match, and the record books opened up. At 40 years and 12 days old, Vozinha became the oldest player ever to play in his country's very first World Cup game. Cape Verde became only the 7th team in the entire history of the World Cup to avoid a loss in their opening match. A nation that had never been there before walked off with a point against the team almost everyone picked to win the whole thing. To his teammates, none of this was a fluke. They like to tease him about his age and training, but they also lean on him as their leader. One of his defenders, Steven Moreira, called him a big legend who had played a crazy game. Another, Pico Lopes, who was actually born in Ireland, said Vozinha lives and breathes Cape Verde, that he is the strict one in the dressing room, always on the others to show up on time and to push harder. The granny, it turns out, runs the whole back line. Now back to that final whistle, because this is where the highlight reel ends and the real story begins. Vozinha did not celebrate the way you might expect. He sank down near his goal, hunched over, and he wept. His teammates ran to wrap their arms around him. And later, when reporters asked him about it, he told them what those tears were really about. He cried, he said, because the grandparents who raised him, the ones who gave him that nickname, were not there to see it. They had passed away a few years earlier. They had been everything to him, and they had missed the single greatest day of his life by just a little too long. And then he said the other thing. The thing that turned a sports story into a story the whole world would talk about. His mother was not there either. Not because she did not want to be, because of a visa. Because of the money they would have had to pay for it. Her name is Ana Candida Evora. She is 59 years old. She works as a house cleaner back home on the island of São Vicente. And here is the wall that stood between her and her son's biggest moment. Cape Verde is one of the countries whose travelers were being asked to pay a visa bond to enter the United States, a payment that could go as high as $5,000, $10,000, even $15,000. It was part of a newer rule aimed at countries where many people stay longer than their visa allows. For a house cleaner from a small island, that kind of money is simply not real. The door was shut before she ever reached it. She was not alone in this. Critics had warned for months that these bonds would price everyday fans and families out of the tournament, the very people who give a World Cup its color. The rule had even been paused for some ticket holders from a handful of the nations playing in it, but many families said the change came too late to help them plan or save in time. For a house cleaner an ocean away, the path had closed long before kickoff. If a 40-year-old shutting out Spain is the kind of story you came here for, take a second to subscribe. I cover the biggest moments of this World Cup every few days, and this run is far from over. Now here is the part that hurts the most. The day before the match, Ana went on national television in Cape Verde and made a promise to the whole country. She said that not a single ball would get past her son. The next afternoon, against one of the most dangerous teams on earth, not a single ball did. She called it, and she was not allowed into the building to watch it come true. There is one twist worth being honest about. The State Department later said it had no record of Ana ever applying for a visa, and pointed out that the family members of World Cup players are supposed to have that bond dropped in the first place. One person close to the family said she did not even have a working passport yet. So the paperwork tells one story, and the heartbroken keeper told another. But strip all of that away and you are left with the same simple fact. On the one day that mattered most, the seat where his mother should have been sitting was empty. The world noticed. Oh, it noticed. Before that game, Vozinha had around 50,000 followers on Instagram. Within hours of the final whistle, that number exploded past 1 million, then 2, then several million, climbing so fast he could barely post about it before the count was out of date. A Brazilian announcer even egged the crowd on, half joking that the whole world should go and follow him. The whole world listened. A 40-year-old from the second division had become an overnight global star. Back home, a nation of 500,000 people poured into the streets. Cape Verdean families spread across America and far beyond cheered right along with them, finally seeing their tiny homeland standing tall on the biggest stage of all. And fans from every corner of the planet, people who had never heard of the Blue Sharks the day before, suddenly wanted them to win every game. But the followers were not the story, the empty seat was, and that is where this turns. When Vozinha's tearful words spread, they reached people with the power to do something. In the United States, the House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, spoke straight to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and asked his department to do everything it could. As he put it, no mother should miss the chance to see her child make history. The Cape Verdean government got involved, FIFA got involved. And the machine that had kept Anna out suddenly moved very, very quickly. The fees were dropped, the paperwork went through, and on June 17th, just days after that match, Ana Candida Evora was given her visa to travel to America. By then, everyday fans had already started raising money to help pay for her trip, and someone at the State Department said travel was now full steam ahead for the game. The plan now is for mother and son to meet again in Miami, because Cape Verde's next game is this Sunday against Uruguay, with their place in the tournament on the line. For the first time, after a lifetime of waiting, she will sit in a World Cup stadium and watch her boy play. And there is real football on the line, not only a reunion. That single point against Spain changed the math of the whole group. In this larger 48-team World Cup, holding one of the favorites to a draw puts Cape Verde in a real fight to reach the knockout rounds. After Uruguay, they closed their group against Saudi Arabia in Houston on June 26th. Win or draw again, and the fairy tale keeps writing itself. And she has not lost any of her confidence. Speaking from home before it was all sorted, she said it simply. She said no ball would get into his goal, and that is exactly what happened. She said she is a great goalkeeper's mother, and that she hopes he keeps saving every ball that comes his way. Think about the whole shape of this. A boy raised by his grandparents on a tiny island. A keeper who turned pro too late, who bounced through leagues nobody watches, who almost quit, who is still playing in the second division at 40 years old. On the biggest stage in the sport, he walked out and shut out the second best team in the world. He made history for a country that had never tasted it. And the only shadow on the whole beautiful day was that the woman who believed in him most, the woman who promised the world he would do exactly this, was kept on the far side of an ocean by a fee she could not pay. Now that shadow is lifting. The granny who taught a nation to dream gets to watch the sequel in person. So when Cape Verde line up against Uruguay this weekend, watch the goal, watch the man in the gloves. Then look up into the stands, because somewhere in that crowd, for the first time in her life, his mother will finally be there. If you want to follow how far this little island can go, subscribe and stick around. The Blue Sharks are not done writing this story, and neither is the granny in goal.